Hello and welcome, everybody. I am your host, Sarah Snell Cook. We're here today at the Creating Connection with Mihail Duta, who is a director, solutions consultant, and payments consultant for Finastra. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Excellent to have you. Obviously, payments is a huge, huge deal right now. I've been told before, if you're in the business of moving money, you're in a good place right now. So lots of fun tech going on there and all kinds of different new things. Why don't you give me a little bit of background on Finastra and your role there?
Certainly. So, as I said, great to be with you today. Finastra is one of the largest fintech companies in the world. We support banks, financial institutions, credit unions, both in the US and globally. So, we have a global presence as well as a very strong US presence. Particularly in payments, we offer products that help financial institutions and credit unions, of course, connect uh, to multiple rails, as we call them, whether it's Fedwire, whether it's ACH, whether it's Swift, whether it's instant payments. We have the right solution for all credit unions. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. So with that context, we are now just a bit past the first year anniversary of FedNow. And the big question is, are credit unions using it?
So it's a great question. Usually that's what we say when we don't have an answer right away, right?
Yes.
So
You've
it,
had
it is a
media
good
training.
question. So so yes, FedNow has been around for a little bit over a year, right? A year and a few months. And actually, very recently, they announced that they've reached over 1,000 participants. I was actually off by a couple of weeks. I anticipated 1,000 participants before the end of the summer. So, well, I wasn't 100% right, but close.
No.
Now, many of those participants are credit unions. So there are credit unions that are participating in FedNow network. Now, probably the follow-up question is going to be, well, how many are sending and how many are receiving? Not to
Wow,
anticipate your next question.
great predictions here. You're better at this one than the last.
So certainly, most of the participants, as we know, credit unions, of course, have chosen to start their foray into instant payments with receive only, which is very common. It's an easier approach, providing your members the ability to receive funds faster, an easier lift, if you will. So yes, this is true. There are about 30 to 40, maybe even 50 senders in the FedNow network at the moment, but the majority, obviously, we talked about 1,000 participants, the majority are receiving. I do, however, think we're going to see, and we are seeing a bit of a switch in that regard. Meaning, if you ask me, look at the future, look at 2025, I would say 2025 is the year of send. You
Okay.
heard it here first, folks. 2025 is the year of send. So yes, I think credit unions are getting ready for their partners, both payments and initiation channels, to really enable send. And we're going to see, I believe, as a result, volumes also increase because there's going to be a lot more send participants.
Now I'm gonna ask you a bit deeper, a bit more detailed with that prediction. So as you said, 50 total users, and even assuming half, say, are credit unions that are sending, I doubt it. But assuming, where do you feel like that's going to go in 2025? What's your actual number? Are you thinking 200, 1,000, 2,000? Where are we going?
In terms of senders or in terms of
And in terms
participants?
of senders.
I see, in terms of senders. So I would say that in terms of senders, it's not going to be an exact science, obviously. We're probably going to be looking at probably 500 to even 500 senders by probably the middle of the year, and maybe even up to 1,000 by the end of the year. And I know those numbers may seem aggressive. There may be folks watching me right now and say, "What is he saying?" But I do believe that we are going to see an influx of participants that are sending, and I'll tell you why. There's a reason behind this. Many of those channels that I was referring to, that credit unions are using, where they allow their members to initiate transactions, they're really on the cusp of being ready and connected to all the providers to be able to enable instant payments for send,
Mhm.
which we didn't really have at scale in 2024. But I believe we will see that ramp up quite rapidly in 2025. So I said somewhere between 500 and 1,000 senders, I would say. Obviously, the timing of when this will happen, it's going to vary. But I certainly think, as I said a few minutes ago, I think 2025 is going to be the year of send. Yes.
Okay. And then so I'll ask that other question then. What about the total users? Where do you think those numbers are
Yeah. So Fed predictions are that by the end of calendar year, right now, they're going to reach probably 1,200 participants. So I believe that if we look at 2025, conservative estimates are probably going to say maybe 3 to 4,000. I think probably might be even close to 5,000 participants.
going?
I think it's that popular, and I'll say why. Right now, many credit unions or all credit unions and financial institutions, they're very busy with ISO work, right? We know we have that big date in March where FedWire transfers move to ISO format. So that takes a lot of time and effort for a lot of institutions and credit unions. I think once we're past that, I think we're going to see a ramp up. Not that there is not interest right now, but we're going to see a ramp up speed and interest into FedNow in terms of both adoption, participation, and enabling both send and receive.
Mm-hmm. And then, so what's my next question?
Hmm.
Now, my next question is, so what's those, I mean, with 1,000 using it now, that is 10% of total financial institutions approximately.
Yes.
What's holding the rest of the 90% back?
Each institution is a little bit different. I've spoken to credit unions who want to be first at the instant payment, rail, if you will, right? They have a very forward look and looking at the future. We know it's here. We want to be able to offer this to our members as soon as possible. And we understand there's obviously we have to be flexible when we do that because whenever you're first at something or among the first, there's going to be things that you haven't thought about, right? Um, then I've seen the what I call fast followers, credit unions that say, well, we don't really want to be first, but we want to be last. We want to follow the first group, right, which would be the second group. And then we have the ones that are really conservative, and they say, well, let's FedNow have enough participation, work out the kinks, then we'll participate. So I think we're past the early adopters. Obviously, 1,000 participants. I think we're way deep into the fast follower group. I think 2025 is going to be the rest. So as far as what prevents, let's say, a credit union from being a member, strategy aside, you need to have the right partner. Meaning, you need to make sure you have the right partner in terms of helping you enabling FedNow.
Mm-hmm.
Not every payment provider can offer that. Some can offer it better than others. Some may give you a quick solution for FedNow receive only, but that's it. You will never be able to enable send or request for payment with that solution. So I think finding the right partner, enabling your institution with the right partner takes time. It's not a decision that a credit union makes lightly, which I understand. Uh, and I think it also depends of how you look at this. You look at this as a quick solution, or you're looking at this as a baseline for the future, which I recommend that credit unions do. And what do I mean by that? When you modernize your payment solution to offer FedNow, don't just think of FedNow. Obviously, it's the first sort of in line, right? FedNow, receive, send. But how about bringing your other methods of payment onto the same platform? How about ACH? How about FedWire? In some cases, how about Swift? Right? Being able to consolidate and be efficient with your payment offering. So those decisions are not decisions that are taken lightly and may take some time. I think that's why we see some of those folks really sort of not play a wait and see game, but taking maybe more time than we would anticipate in terms of making a decision and actually going down the FedNow path.
Mm-hmm. And I believe early on too, there were some fraud concerns, like how do I get my money back kind of thing, or how do I make the member whole or whatever, there's a lot of different pieces around that. Has any has any of that like occurred with this the fast, not the fast ones, the cutting edge folks that are on it already?
Yeah, so fraud is certainly a concern when it comes to any payment, but especially in terms of instant payments. It comes up a lot, frankly. How do I handle fraud? We hear the expression all the time: faster payment, faster fraud. Well, I can tell you that from what we know in this first year and a few months, fraud has been very, very low within the FedNow network. And that's due to a number of reasons. First of all, Fed is doing some pretty innovative things around fraud in terms of preventing fraud, of course. There's multiple initiatives, some that are in place already, some that are coming to really look at fraud and prevent fraud from a network perspective. Then also there's a lot of education that's out there in terms of how do you prevent fraud at credit union level. And there are ways to do that. You can control who has access to FedNow. You can control the amounts that you can process through FedNow. Certainly, I've seen situations where credit unions start at very low amounts, which I understand, and I'm talking about Stent here in particular, right? So, while the limit for the network is 500,000, maybe I want to start with $10,000 as a limit per transaction, as one example. And then, of course, is the traditional or the more traditional, I would say, the fraud providers that we integrate, we as payment providers, we integrate with, right? Where every single FedNow transactions go through a scan process. It's being looked at for fraud before it's being released to the network. So there are multiple ways to handle that, but I can tell you that in terms of fraud for the first year and a few months, it's been very, very low.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so this is one of those things that can help credit unions remain relevant, which is super important for us at the Credit Union Connection. So what are the dangers of not going forward with a FedNow?
Another great question, and I get that question a lot, and I actually preemptively answer that question. You don't want to be in a position where your competition already offers it. Make no mistake, FedNow, it's here to stay, it's only going to grow. The longer you wait, the more behind you fall in offering your members all the capabilities that maybe other credit unions and other financial institutions are offering. You certainly don't want to wait to a point where members are knocking on your door and asking, can you offer FedNow? Because if you waited for that point, you're probably already behind.
Right. Yeah.
So that's I think it's how you should look at instant payments and FedNow in particular.
Mm-hmm. And so as we're entering in year two, um, you've talked a little bit about this already, but what are gonna be the trends? Not just like the numbers of credit unions, but how do you see credit unions leveraging it? Because you mentioned bringing other payments across the to the same platform.
Certainly, one thing that we've seen already with instant payments and being with Finastra, I have the luxury of being able to reference instant payments around the globe because we've implemented those in many other geographies. Use cases are very interesting, and we've seen this with FedNow too. Use cases and the spectrum of use cases is going to increase. So this is not just two members paying each other through FedNow. This is a business to consumer opportunity. This is a consumer to business opportunity. So I think we're going to see more and more the spectrum of use cases go wider and wider in terms of how FedNow is going to be used.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be just a very specific use cases. I think we're going to see more and more use cases. Obviously, we talked about daily payroll, which is like a common example with instant payments, right? The ability for somebody to be paid daily. We're talking about insurance payments. We're talking about title companies, for example. But definitely at a member level, whether it's a corporate member, whether it's the retail member, members will be able to leverage multiple use cases when it comes to FedNow. I think that's going to be a trend where we're going to see the FedNow being used for more and more situations that maybe we haven't thought about it before.
And as a B2B company, it makes perfect sense to get those, whatever, it'll help when you exchange hands, money exchanges hands, that's when you are facilitating, the business itself. So, yeah, I can definitely see really great potential there. So, uh, as you may know, I always give my guests the final thoughts during this interview. So how do you want to close it up for our credit union audience?
Great. Well, I would want to leave the audience with a few thoughts. So certainly make no mistake, FedNow, it's here, it's only going to grow. And I recommend that you definitely onboard and become a participant sooner rather than later. You don't want to wait for your members to ask for it. Members may not necessarily know about FedNow today. They'll certainly know about FedNow in the near future. But if you ask any member if they want their payments executed faster or they want to receive their funds faster, guess what? The answer is going to be yes.
Mhm.
So, final thought, definitely look at onboarding FedNow. Make sure you choose the right partner because you don't want to make a decision that's short term. You want to make a decision that's long term and helps you long term.
Right. Yeah, it's not just a tool, it actually has a strategic business purpose. Thank you so much
Exactly.
for joining us, Mihail. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime. Great to be here with you today.